Your silence will hurt more than your words ever could, because it echoes in the places where they used to feel safe. My friends, let's not sugarcoat it. When you disappear, when you stop reaching out, stop chasing, stop showing up with that same familiar warmth, they feel it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one quiet night, one missed routine, one old song, and boom, it hits. Not like an explosion, but like a cold room that used to feel like home. That's the power you hold, not in the chaos you could create, but in the calm you now carry. And when they realize you're gone, not with bitterness, but with peace, it's not closure they feel. It's consequence. If you've ever had to walk away without clapping back, without begging, without breaking down, go ahead and hit that like button right now. And if you're done being the one who always shows up first, the one who always gives more, the one who forgets themselves just to be remembered, subscribe. You're in the right place. This space is for the ones learning to choose stillness over struggle, clarity over chaos, and self-respect over validation. Hey folks, imagine this. You're a lighthouse, standing tall, silent, unmoving. You don't chase ships. You don't scream for them to notice you. You just shine. Day after day, night after night. But some people, they sail right past you, again and again. They think you'll always be there, until one day you stop. The light goes out, not out of spite, but because you were never their GPS. You were their guide, and they chose not to follow. Now they're lost at sea, drifting, confused. And the silence, that's the map they never learned to read. See, disappearing doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're playing games. It means you've finally learned the difference between effort and exhaustion, between connection and convenience, between love and loyalty, and just being someone's emotional insurance policy. You didn't walk away to get a reaction. You walked away because you got tired of reacting to disrespect, to distance, to the silent treatment that they thought you'd never return. We've been lied to, fed this narrative that being the bigger person means always staying, always forgiving, always explaining. But here's the truth. Being the bigger person sometimes means walking away with no announcement, no speech, and no second chances. Because sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's evolution. You're not running from them. You're returning to yourself. You're not being cold, you're being clear. You're not seeking attention, you're reclaiming your energy. You're not bitter, you're better. Better because you've finally stopped negotiating with someone who only showed up when it was convenient for them. And now that you're gone, they feel it. They pretend they don't. They'll post like they've healed, laugh louder, move faster. But behind that noise is a quiet panic, the realization that you were peace they mistook for background noise. And you, my friend, you didn't just stop texting. You didn't just walk away. You became unavailable to the chaos you used to tolerate. You stopped explaining your worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding it. And the moment you did that, the shift happened. Not in them, in you. This isn't revenge. This isn't emotional warfare. This is recalibration. You're not teaching a lesson. You're being one. Let them sit in the silence they handed to you first. Let them hear the echo of your absence in the places they never thanked you for being. And when they finally realize what they lost, you'll be too far ahead to look back. So drop this in the comments right now. I choose clarity. Say it with your chest. Type it with your truth. Tap like. Hit subscribe. Stay with me. Because what's coming next? It's going to shift everything. Number 1. Denial. They'll be back. The first stage of losing something real is pretending it's not really gone. My friends, denial is a funny thing. It whispers in the mind like a comfort blanket. It wraps itself around the ego and says, they'll be back. Not because the heart believes it, but because the ego can't imagine a world where it's not in control. That's the first storm they walk into when you disappear. Not sadness, not regret, not even clarity, just disbelief. Imagine someone lighting a candle every night, confident the flame will always return. They never guard it from the wind, never shield it from the rain, because they believe it will just reignite itself, over and over. But one night, the candle doesn't light. It's not broken. It's just done. And now they're standing there, match in hand, confused, because they never believed the light could go out. Not yours, not ever. That's denial. That's stage one. At first, they don't panic. They shrug. They scroll. They distract themselves. They say, give it a few days. They think your silence is a trick, a tactic, a test, a move to make them miss you. And why wouldn't they? You always came back before. You always reached out. You always gave them a soft place to land, even after they made the crash landing your fault. So now, when you go quiet, when you stop showing up, they don't flinch. Not yet. Because the ego tells them this isn't over. It convinces them that your absence is just noise, a mood, a moment. But here's the thing, folks. Silence doesn't always mean tension. Sometimes it means transition. The quiet doesn't always come before the storm. Sometimes it comes after it, after you've weathered the chaos, after you've cried behind the screen, questioned your worth, begged the universe to explain why you were never enough for someone who asked for everything. That silence, it's not a pause, it's a decision, and they don't see it. Not yet. You're not ignoring them. You've outgrown explaining. You're not ghosting them. You've just stopped haunting yourself in the spaces they used to occupy. Still, they tell themselves stories. They're just trying to get a reaction. They're just playing hard to get. They'll fold. They always do. Because if they admit the truth, that this time you're really gone, it would shatter the illusion that they were ever in control. And the ego. It would rather live in a lie than kneel to reality. But let's break that lie wide open. They say if someone pulls back, chase. If someone withdraws, double down. If someone disappears, call it a phase. That's the script, right? The one built on emotional laziness and cheap confidence. But here's the truth. Sometimes people don't pull back to be chased. They pull back because they're choosing peace. They vanish not to play games, but to stop being played. And when they do, when you do, the first thing the other person feels isn't loss, it's confusion. Because silence isn't part of the cycle they're used to. And that confusion quickly becomes denial. What if they're just busy? What if they're trying to teach me a lesson? What if this is just a cooling off period? What if, what if, what if? They throw those questions around like anchors, hoping one of them will catch something stable. But all they're really doing is drifting, further from truth, deeper into delusion. And let's be real, my friend. It's not just them who feel the pull. You feel it too. You ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? What if they think I'm being dramatic? What if they're waiting for me too? That's where the fear creeps in. Not because you're weak, but because you've been conditioned to believe that disappearing means defeat, that silence means surrender, that pulling away means you're giving up. But here's what Stoicism teaches us. It's not giving up. It's giving in to truth. It's choosing stillness over struggle. It's choosing clarity over emotional chaos. It's choosing to walk away, not to hurt them, but to stop hurting you. Still, the denial they sit in will feel loud. It'll sound like laughter in their stories, like new captions about peace and growth, like they're untouched, unbothered. But trust me, that noise, it's just ego trying to talk over the silence you left behind. And ego hates quiet. Because quiet doesn't give feedback. Quiet doesn't play along. Quiet doesn't explain itself. But you're not here to feed the ego. You're here to starve it. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And this is where it gets tough, because denial, on both sides, is comfortable. It tells you to send that "just checking in" text. It tells them to wait for you to come running. But every time you resist, you break a pattern, you rewrite the story, and the silence they thought was temporary starts to feel permanent. That's when it begins to shift. That's when they start watching the clock a little differently, checking their phone a little more, noticing your absence not just in the chat, but in their chest, because presence doesn't need a loud goodbye to be missed. Sometimes the softest exit leaves the loudest echo. So let them sit in denial. Let them wear confidence like armor. Let them convince themselves that this is just another round in a game they think they're still playing. Don't correct them. Don't clarify. Let them bet on your return and lose. Not because you're cruel, but because this time you're not bluffing. This isn't a move. It's a moment. Not a strategy, a shift. They'll tell themselves you're coming back. But you've already moved forward. So if you're standing in that silence, if you're resisting the urge to explain, to reassure, to repeat the same old patterns, drop this in the comments right now. I broke the cycle. Say it. Show it. Show yourself. Show the world around you that you've stepped out of the noise and into your clarity. That you're not here to beg. You're not here to chase. You're not here to be misunderstood by people who only listened when you spoke in pain. Press that like button, subscribe for more, and stay with me, because what's coming next? That denial. It starts to crack. And what spills out is something they never expected to feel again. Number 2. Confusion. Why aren't they reaching out? Silence doesn't need volume to be felt. It just needs to break a pattern. My friends, here's where the real unraveling begins. After denial fizzles out, confusion kicks in. The part where they thought your silence was a stunt? Yeah, that's starting to wear thin. Now they're checking their phone not just to see if you've messaged, but to make sure it still works. The silence that once felt like a phase now feels suspicious, unexpected, uncomfortable, not because you did something loud, but because you did absolutely nothing. You see, they were ready for a storm, an argument, a paragraph, a passive-aggressive post, something dramatic. That's what they've been taught to expect. That's what people do when they're hurt, right? Make noise, stir the pot, say things they don't mean, and then double back with, "Sorry, I was just emotional." But you gave them nothing. No drama, no warning, no trail of breadcrumbs to follow. You pulled back like a tide that doesn't crash. It just slips away quietly, leaving behind space they don't know how to fill. And that space? It's loud. Now they're refreshing your page, watching your story the second it goes up, hovering in silence, hoping for a sign, a quote that might be about them, a song lyric that hints you still care, even just a like on their post to prove you're still lurking. But you've gone still, not absent, not angry, just unavailable. That's what throws them off, because they're used to being able to read you, to know exactly how you'll respond, what you'll say, when you'll crack. But now, you've gone unpredictable. And confusion doesn't thrive in uncertainty, it drowns in it. They don't understand it because you're not reacting the way people usually do. You're not typing up long essays trying to make them understand how they hurt you. You're not throwing emotional punches to get closure. You're not showing them pain so they'll know you cared. You're showing them nothing. And that nothing, it speaks louder than anything you could say. Because it's controlled, it's still. It's not about punishment, it's about peace. And peace, it terrifies people who only know love through chaos. You didn't disappear to be petty. You disappeared to protect a version of you that kept giving CPR to a connection that was already breathless. You didn't vanish to make them feel guilty. You vanished because you were done sacrificing your own mental health just to keep them emotionally comfortable, and they don't know what to do with that kind of silence. They don't know how to sit with their own thoughts, because for so long you were the distraction from their accountability. Now they're left with questions they never expected to ask. Why haven't they messaged? Are they actually done? Do they not care anymore? Did I push too far? And let me be real with you, those questions. They echo, they don't come with answers, because the person who always gave them answers, you, has stopped explaining. The pattern is broken, and broken patterns don't just leave gaps. They create doubt, doubt in their own power, doubt in their place in your life, doubt in the narrative they told themselves that no matter what, you'd always come back, but you didn't. And confusion turns inward. It becomes a spiral. They won't show it. They'll still post, still smile, still pretend to be unbothered. But behind that curated confidence is a whole lot of panic. Because this silence, it's not the temporary kind, it's the kind that feels like an ending they didn't prepare for. Let me tell you something powerful, my friend. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding their control. You stop giving them emotional access they didn't earn. You stop performing for the applause they never gave. That's why this stage is so uncomfortable for them, because for the first time, they have no idea where they stand with you. And that mystery? It messes with them. But I know what you're thinking too. I know it's not easy to hold that silence. I know you've got that voice inside whispering, what if they don't care? What if they moved on? What if they're not even confused? That voice, that's not truth. That's trauma talking. That's your old self, the one who thought being loud was the only way to be loved, the one who thought if they didn't notice your absence, maybe you were never enough to begin with. But don't believe that lie. They feel it. Maybe not publicly, maybe not loudly, but late at night, in the stillness, they're replaying your silence like it's a song they can't turn off. Because confusion isn't a lack of answers. It's the presence of consequences. So keep being the stillness that disrupts. Keep being the peace they never protected. Keep being the mystery they can't decode. You didn't vanish out of anger. You didn't fall silent out of weakness. You disappeared because your sanity was more important than someone else's comfort. And if you're holding the line right now, if you've pulled back your energy, turned down your volume, and chosen silence over self-sacrifice, then I want you to drop this in the comments right now. I choose peace. Say it. Show it. Show yourself. Show the world around you that your silence isn't passive. It's powerful. That you don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to stop showing up for people who stopped showing up for you. And stay with me, because what comes next? That confusion, it starts turning into something they didn't expect. Doubt. Number 3. Ego shock. Wait, did they actually let go? Ego never mourns the loss of love. It mourns the loss of control. My friends, this is the moment the silence turns from confusion into crisis. The moment the ego, which once sat comfortably on its throne, begins to panic. Because now, The silence has stretched a little too long. Your absence has stayed a little too quiet. And that part of them, the part that once believed they could press a button and you'd come back, is now staring into a terrifying possibility. You might actually be gone. At first, it was all ego. They'll text any day now. They're just being dramatic. This is just a phase. They told themselves that because believing anything else would have cracked the mirror they spend their life looking into. But now, that mirror is shattered. And what's left isn't reflection, it's reality. The realization that this isn't a test, this isn't a timeout, this isn't a bluff. This is freedom, and not theirs, yours. See, they didn't expect that. They were prepared for a cold shoulder, not complete disconnection. They were prepared for a delay, not a decision. They thought you'd be back, just like always, soft-hearted, open-handed, tired but loyal. But this time you didn't pause, you walked. And not to punish, but to protect your peace. And now, the ego doesn't know what to do. Imagine a magician who's always been able to pull the rabbit out of the hat until one day the rabbit's gone. The trick doesn't work, the crowd doesn't cheer, and the magician, they're not admired anymore, they're exposed. That's what this moment feels like to them. Not just confusion, but crumbling. They're scrolling through your messages now, reading words they once skimmed past, zooming in on your last sentence, wondering, was that a goodbye? They're revisiting the last time you reached out, the last time you showed up for them emotionally, and realizing something brutal. That moment wasn't a pause. It was a parting. You didn't block them. You didn't announce your exit. You didn't slam the door. You just stopped making excuses for disrespect. And ego? It doesn't know how to grieve a clean goodbye. Because this was never about whether or not you cared. They know you cared. They felt it every time you over-explained, overextended, overgave. But that's the problem. They thought your heart was theirs to manage. They thought your patience was endless. And now the one they thought they had wrapped around their finger is suddenly nowhere to be found. And it threatens them. Why? Because ego doesn't fear rejection, it fears irrelevance. It fears being ignored by the very person it once believed was safe. And when you stop reacting, stop checking in, stop orbiting around them, they start spiraling. Not because they miss the connection, but because they don't know who they are without your attention validating their power. They used to be the sun, and you? You were the steady planet. Predictable, loyal, revolving. But now, you've become your own gravity. And they're lost in a sky they no longer control. Now, the questions change. Did I go too far? Did I lose them for good? Were they serious this whole time? That last one cuts the deepest, because they assumed you'd always come back, that your softness meant weakness, that your presence meant permanence. But now they're realizing what we've always known. Even the most loyal soul has a line. And once it's crossed, there is no return. This is the ego's breaking point, the part where fear isn't hidden, it's visible, in the way they check your story but don't respond, in the way they post, hoping you'll notice, in the way they hover around your silence, trying to decode it. Because they're not sure anymore, and that lack of certainty, it devours them. But let's pause for a second, because this moment isn't just about them. It's also about you. You feel it too, don't you? That voice inside saying, maybe I was too cold. Maybe I should have said something. Maybe they didn't mean to hurt me. That's not clarity speaking. That's conditioning. That's your old identity trying to pull you back into the cycle. But not this time. This time, you held the silence. You didn't beg. You didn't chase. You didn't trade your peace for their confusion. And now your absence is not just noticed, it's feared. Because the moment you stopped reaching, the control shattered. And now they're not just confused. They're not just watching. They're not just curious. They're threatened. And if you're feeling that shift, if you've stepped out of the storm and into your own stillness, then drop this in the comments right now. I am untouchable. Say it with pride. Show it in your silence. Show yourself. Show the world. Show the people who thought they could toy with your love that you are not disposable. You are decisive. Tap like, hit subscribe, and stay with me. Because what happens next? That fear in them, it starts transforming into something deeper. Regret. Number 4. Reflection. Where did I lose them? The most haunting goodbyes are the ones you never hear coming. My friends, this is the part they never expected. Not just that you're gone, but that you left without ceremony. No fight, no final paragraph, no tearful monologue begging them to see your worth. Just stillness, just space, just you, no longer available. And now, the silence you left behind. It becomes a mirror, one they can't look away from. They go back. Back to the messages, back to the voice notes, back to the late-night conversations when you stayed up just to listen, to soothe, to be there. They replay it all like detectives at a crime scene, trying to pinpoint the exact moment things changed. Was it that one-word reply, that call they ignored, that meme they didn't laugh at? They zoom in on your last message like it's a riddle that might save them from drowning in their own confusion. But they don't find a moment, because there wasn't one. That's the thing about Stoic detachment. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need fireworks. It doesn't need drama. It just happens. Like a leaf finally letting go of a branch, not because the wind pushed too hard, but because the season changed. That's what happened to you. You didn't leave out of rage. You didn't disappear to hurt them. You simply reached a point where continuing felt like self-betrayal. And so you stopped showing up. Not as revenge, not as a lesson, but as a release. And now, they're left with 1,000 small memories and one big question. Where did I lose them? And here's the truth that keeps them awake at night. There wasn't one moment. It was the slow build-up of being unseen, unheard, undervalued. It was the exhaustion of explaining the same hurt in different words. It was the weight of being available for someone who never asked how you were doing. So no, there wasn't a breaking point. There was just a slow unhooking, a quiet untangling. And by the time they realized it, you weren't angry anymore. You were just done. And now their reflection stares back at them in silence, not because you want them to hurt, but because you finally stopped hurting for them. You see, people like to believe they'll get a warning, a signal, a sign that things are getting bad. But when you're dealing with someone who operates from peace, from self-mastery, from Stoicism, you don't get warnings. You get withdrawal. They remember how you used to over-explain, how you used to chase clarity, how you used to ask, did I do something wrong? But now, you ask nothing, and that shift, it breaks them. Because silence, my friends, is not absence, it's awareness. It's what happens when someone wakes up to the truth that their presence was only appreciated in its absence. And now, the very thing they took for granted has become the thing they can't stop thinking about. They thought you'd reach out. They thought you'd flinch. They thought you were just cooling off. But the more they sit in this quiet, the more they realize You're not on pause. You're in peace. And that peace? It holds up a mirror they can't argue with. It doesn't yell. It doesn't accuse. It just reflects their distance, their silence, their games, their inconsistency. All of it, now staring back at them. And here's the most powerful part. They can't blame you, because you didn't burn the bridge. You just stopped crossing it alone. You stopped asking where you stood. You stopped fighting for a place in their life they never protected. You stopped pouring into a cup that always felt half empty, and in doing so, you handed them the full picture, without saying a single word. So now they sit, scrolling through the past, wishing for a chance to rewind what they refused to value in real time. But you're no longer the same version of yourself. You're not watching, you're not waiting, you're not wondering. You're healing, you're rising, you're gone. And if you're in that space right now, where your silence has turned into truth, where you've chosen peace over proving your point, then drop this in the comments right now. My silence is clarity. Say it for the times you begged to be heard. Say it for the moments you over-explained your heart. Say it for the version of you that kept showing up without being met halfway. Tap that like button, hit subscribe if this is your language, and stay with me. Because what's coming next is the stage they never thought they'd reach. Regret. Number 5. Shame. I took them for granted. People don't realize they had something rare until they're left with something replaceable. My friends, this is where the silence starts to burn, not on the surface, but underneath the ego, underneath the performance, underneath the fake peace they've been trying to post their way through. This is the stage that hits different. Shame. The part where they're no longer confused, no longer trying to decode your silence like a puzzle. Now they know exactly what happened. They took you for granted. And worse, you didn't make a scene when you left. You just never came back. It's a slow ache that creeps in when their phone stays dry, when the chat thread stops moving, when their dopamine scroll doesn't get your name in the notifications, when they post a story and nothing. Not a like, not a reaction, not even a passive view, just quiet. And that quiet, it gets loud. Because now they remember, not the chaos, not the fights, not the tension. They remember the consistency. The way you remembered the little things they said. The way you checked in, not because you had to, but because you cared. The way you sent good luck messages before their meetings. The way you stayed on the call when their world felt heavy, even when you had your own storms brewing. They remember how much of your love came without conditions, how it wasn't about being wanted, it was about being there. And now, in your absence, it clicks. You never wanted attention. You wanted reciprocity, but they never gave it. Not fully, not freely. They assumed your love would always be on tap. They assumed you'd always bounce back after being ignored. They assumed your patience was unlimited, your presence permanent. They mistook your consistency for convenience. And now that you're gone, they're starting to feel the weight of what they lost. Because now the silence isn't mysterious. It's earned. They earned your exit. Every unread message, every one-sided effort, every time they made you feel like too much while giving you the bare minimum. That wasn't just emotional distance, that was accumulated evidence, and now it plays back in their mind like a reel on repeat. All the times you showed up when they didn't ask, all the chances you gave when they didn't deserve them, all the energy you poured into a connection they didn't protect. And worst of all, you never asked them to match you. You just wanted them to try, to meet you halfway, to stop making you feel like you had to earn your spot in a space you were already showing up for. But they didn't, because they were used to love being loud. They didn't understand that when a Stoic soul pulls back, it's not dramatic, it's final. Now they sit in the stillness and realize something painful. The person they lost wasn't asking for too much. They were just the wrong person to receive it. And that shame, it lingers, because there's no one to blame now. You didn't ghost them. You didn't scream. You didn't manipulate. You just stopped overgiving. And let me tell you, there is nothing louder than the absence of someone who used to give without asking. They feel it in the empty check-ins. They feel it when they open their phone and you're not there. They feel it in the moments they need someone to talk to, and the person who once held all their chaos is now at peace. And that shame, that realization, it doesn't just sting, it transforms them, not out of love, out of loss. They start asking the real questions. Why didn't I appreciate them? Why didn't I give more? Why did I think they'd always stay? And here's the part they weren't ready for. You didn't change. You just stopped trying to prove your value to someone who was blind to it. And now that they finally see it, they don't get access to it anymore. Because you're no longer the version of yourself who waits to be seen. You've stepped into your own presence, into your own peace. And now the version of you they feel ashamed for losing is no longer available. So if you're feeling that, if you've carried someone's silence for too long and finally decided to carry yourself instead, drop this in the comments right now. I deserved more. Say it, show it. Let it be the reminder, for them, for you, for everyone watching, that your value doesn't shrink because someone couldn't recognize it. That shame, that's not yours to carry anymore. Tap like, subscribe for more truths like this, and stay with me. Because what happens next isn't just shame, it's obsession. Number 6, obsession. What if I lost them for good? They don't miss you out loud because silence doesn't give them permission to perform. My friends, this is where it gets dark, not loud, not dramatic, dark. Not because you did anything, but because you didn't. You didn't reply. You didn't check in. You didn't reach back. And that silence, it broke something they didn't know was fragile until it shattered the illusion that you'd always be there. This is the obsession phase, not the kind they sing about in love songs, the kind that creeps in quietly, late at night, early in the morning, in the in-between spaces where distractions don't reach. They spiral, not in chaos, but in reflection, regret, relentless curiosity. What if they really moved on? Did they replace me? Why haven't they looked at my story? Was that last message their way of saying goodbye? They refresh your page like a ritual, not to engage, but to feel something, a sign, a like, a view, a single breadcrumb, but your silence gives them nothing. You've gone ghost, but not to haunt, to heal. And that healing, that distance, it becomes the thing they obsess over because they can't measure it, can't predict it, can't control it. You're no longer part of their equation, and that unknown is their punishment. They post more now. Quotes that scream peace. Photos that whisper, "I'm doing just fine." New captions, new filters, new people in the frame. But it's all noise, because deep down they know they're not over it. They're not healed. They're not happy. They're hurting, but they won't say it. Not publicly, not to their friends, maybe not even to themselves, because to admit they lost something real, that would mean admitting they fumbled it, and ego doesn't admit that easily. Ego clings, ego masks, ego pretends, but the mind, the heart, they remember. They remember how calm you were, how stable your love felt, how safe it was to fall apart around you and still be held. They remember the way you saw them, fully, without judgment, without manipulation, without trying to change them. And now, you're not seeing them at all. Not through the screen, not through a message, not even through a goodbye, because what haunts them now isn't what you said, it's what you didn't. You didn't write the final message. You didn't ask for closure. You didn't try to fix it. You didn't try to be enough again. You just stopped performing. And when someone's ego is used to being fed, your silence doesn't just feel like distance. It feels like starvation. It strips away their power. It forces them to sit in their own echo chamber of could-haves, should-haves, and what-ifs. They don't want you back because they love you. They want you back because they can't stand the thought that you're no longer chasing. Because now, they're the one wondering. They're the one overthinking. They're the one waiting for the notification that never comes. And let's be honest, this isn't easy for you either. You still feel the pull sometimes. You still wonder if they're thinking about you. You still battle with the temptation to check in just once. But you don't. Because you've grown. Because you know better now. You know attention isn't affection. Performance isn't peace. And love doesn't beg for clarity. It becomes it. Your silence isn't punishment. It's power. And they're learning that the hard way. They can post. They can pretend. They can keep performing for an audience that doesn't include you, but they can't replace presence. Not the kind you gave. Not the kind that made them feel understood without saying a word. Not the kind that now lives only in memory, not in message threads. And that's what obsession really is. Not love, not longing, the endless search for something they once held and lost. So if you're standing in that stillness, if you're resisting the pull, not out of spite but out of self-respect, I want you to drop this in the comments right now. I owe them nothing. Say it, type it, show it, to yourself, to the world, to the version of you that used to give everything and ask for scraps in return. Tap like, hit subscribe, stay with me, because what's next isn't just confusion, it's consequences. Number 7. Realization. They were peace, and I fumbled it. They don't miss who you were. They miss who they were when they were around you. My friends, this is where the fog lifts, where the confusion clears, where denial dies, and reality, it finally lands, hard. This is the stage of realization, not the surface-level kind, the deep kind, the kind that crawls under their skin in the middle of the night, the kind that creeps into quiet moments, into routine songs, into memories they didn't think would matter until they started hearing them differently, and now, in the stillness, they feel the weight of what they lost, not a body, not attention, peace, because that's what you were, peace. Not chaos, not drama, not noise. You were the steady breath after a long day. You were the calm in the middle of their internal war. You were the space where they could put down the mask and still be loved. But they didn't see it. Because peace doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't demand validation. It just is. And in a world addicted to emotional roller coasters, they mistook your stillness for boredom, your steadiness for predictability, your presence for permanence. They thought you'd always be there. that no matter how many times they pulled away, you'd reach back, that no matter how little they gave, you'd fill in the gaps, that no matter how inconsistent they were, you'd be the constant. But now they know. You didn't disappear to punish them. You disappeared to protect yourself. You didn't ghost them. You outgrew them, not out of spite, but out of necessity. And here's the part they never expected. You're not mad. You're not raging. You're not posting cryptic quotes or subtweeting. You're not slamming doors or demanding apologies. You're just gone, whole, healed, unreachable. And that is what guts them. Because if you had left in chaos, they could have blamed you. If you had shouted, they could have labeled you too emotional. If you had begged, they could have felt powerful. But you didn't. You just let go. You released your grip without a sound. And now, every ounce of peace they used to feel in your presence, it haunts them, because now they're surrounded by noise, conversations that feel shallow, people who don't listen like you did, connections that are loud but empty. They try to fill the gap, try to move on, try to find better, but every time they do, they feel it. The difference. You weren't better because you were perfect. You were better because you were present. You didn't offer performance, you offered peace. And that's not easy to find. Because when you've tasted calm, chaos becomes unbearable. And now all they're left with is noise, and none of it sounds like you. They scroll back, not just through the messages, but through who they were when they were with you, the safety they felt, the way you could quiet their storms with a single look, a single word, the way you made love feel safe. But they didn't protect that peace. They played with it, tested it, took it for granted, and now it's gone. You didn't slam the door. You didn't cut them off. You didn't even say goodbye. You just stopped giving CPR to something that stopped breathing for you. You stopped fighting to stay relevant in someone's life who made you feel optional. And instead of proving your worth, you started living it. That's the shift they never saw coming. Because they thought the version of you that stayed would always be available. But what they didn't realize was that version of you was the one breaking, the one that stayed too long, the one that kept loving through exhaustion, the one that kept trying even when the effort was never mutual. But now you're no longer that person. And what they feel now isn't rejection, it's repercussion. So if you've walked away, not to punish, but to heal, if you've chosen to rise instead of chase, if you've finally become the peace you used to beg for, drop this in the comments right now. I am peace. Say it, own it, let it echo, not for them, for you, for the version of you that once settled, that once pleaded, that once thought love had to hurt in order to mean something. Tap like, subscribe if this is hitting home, and stay with me, because what comes next isn't just realization, it's the search. And they won't find what they're looking for, because you've already become unreachable. And so, my friends, here's the truth. You didn't walk away to be cruel. You walked away to be whole. Your silence wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of your rebirth. Let them feel the loss, not through revenge, but through your peace. If this message hit something real inside you, like the video, subscribe for more content that speaks to your strength, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And drop this in the comments right now. I choose peace. Because from here on out, it's power over performance.